Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. A few hours ago, the Jean Pascal Bernard Hopkins fight ended officially in a draw. Now, that's a fight in which my prediction was that the underdog, the 2-1 underdog, Bernard Hopkins, would shock everyone and take Pascal's title in Quebec City. Right now, the fight has generated controversy, let me just say, in the spirit of a past video I did after the Carl Froch Andre Durrell fight, where I picked Froch to win the fight. He was given the decision. I saw the fight and then made a follow-up video in which I said that my pick was wrong, even though my guy won, and that Andre Durrell won that fight. In that spirit, let's talk about this fight, Hopkins-Pascal. Now, understand the controversy in this fight. The judges' scorecards, no one scored it for Pascal, right? One judge had it 114-112 Hopkins. The other two judges had the fight a draw, 113-113 and 114-114. On Showtime, Al Bernstein, who I respect a great deal, had the fight for Hopkins 114-112. Antonio Tarver, who I respect a great deal and who fought Bernard Hopkins, had the fight 114-112 for Jean Pascal. The press row guys, these are three journalists who were scoring the fight for Showtime informally, had the fight 115-112 for Hopkins, 114-112 for Pascal, and 115-111 for Hopkins. During the post-fight interview, and it was a bit of a shocker, Jim Gray, while interviewing Hopkins in an interview that was being heard by everyone in the arena, told Hopkins that he thought Bernard Hopkins had won the fight. So let's go through it. I think the best way to do this is to go by the fight round by round. So you can take out your scorecard, compare it to mine, and you'll know who I thought won the fight. Let me just say a few things before I begin. Let me just say that Jean Pascal's style, it's not Sergio Martinez's style. Not all ambush styles are alike. Sergio Martinez, the middleweight champion, fights sporadically like Jean Pascal. However, Martinez is actually a very skilled counterpuncher. He counters with both hands. When he comes inside, he can actually go to the body and stay inside. Take a look at the first round. And unfortunately, this round's been overlooked because of what happened in the second round. But take a look at the first round of Sergio Martinez's gem in the rematch against Paul Williams. You're going to see that Martinez literally gets inside and starts to go to Paul Williams's body. Jean Pascal, unfortunately, in my opinion, could not land on Bernard Hopkins, his right counter. Right? First off, Pascal doesn't counter that much. Right? He's very different than Sergio Martinez. He's an ambush fighter, but he's a lead fighter predominantly. Right? He did not land too many right counters on Bernard Hopkins. Right? Also, he does have a pretty nasty left hook. It's a money punch, right? And he can actually counter with that left hook. He did hit a few good left hook counters on Bernard Hopkins, in addition to the lead lefts that he threw from time to time. The problem was that he never went, at least not in any sustained manner, to Bernard Hopkins' body. Hopkins was the only one putting, body blows in the bank during this fight, and he did that in several rounds. Just take a look from early on in the fight to the end of the fight on Pascal's lack of body work. Also, Hopkins, let me say this. Bernard Hopkins had not been knocked down in 16 years. But it's clear that his balance is not what it used to be, right? In fact, Bernard Hopkins, if you saw the Roy Jones fight, you'll see Bernard was on the canvas. He was claiming he was hit behind the head and stuff like that. Bernard's legs are 45-year-old legs, right? In this fight, we'll talk about the knockdowns. He got knocked down twice in this fight. And quite frankly, both were a little bit shocking. Now let's talk about the fight. The first round. Pascal hits Hopkins with the right hand. I gave the first round of Pascal 10-8. Hopkins hits the canvas. He gets up. He claims the punch was behind his head. I've looked at that knockdown several times. It looks to me to be a legitimate knockdown on the side of Hopkins' head, not the back of the head. Let me also point out that Hopkins, of course, comes in and is leaning forward. I believe it's a legitimate knockdown. I gave the first round of Pascal 10-8. Second round, I gave the second round of Pascal 10-9. Third round, even Hopkins supporters, even people like me who predicted that Hopkins would win the fight, have to concede the knockdown in the third round off a left hook is legit. I gave the third round to Pascal 10-8. So, after 3 rounds, I had Jean Pascal up by 5 points. Let's go to the fourth round. The fourth round, I believe the fourth round is arguably the most important round in this fight. It's a turning point. Bernard Hopkins shortens the distance, starts to do body work. Jean Pascal has no answers. Let me also point out, too, that Jean Pascal, who is a home run hitter, he's throwing big shots, left and right hands, right? He's coming in, he's trying to stop Bernard Hopkins. He has knocked down Bernard Hopkins twice, right? Jean Pascal, unfortunately, is so defensively limited that when Bernard Hopkins starts to hit him to the body, Pascal literally has no answers except to try to get offensive himself. And then when that fails, he tries to back away using his legs to get out of harm's way, right? That seemed to be the theme of the fight. In the fourth round is the first round in which Bernard's body work starts to make the fight look a bit one-sided. I gave the fourth round to Hopkins 10-9. I gave the fifth round to Hopkins 10-9. Something else happens in that fifth round. Between rounds, Nassim Richardson, one of boxing's best, tells Bernard, don't go for the big punch. He even goes further and says he goes for the big punch. That's why he's always tired at the end of fights, right? He said, just keep making those investments. If you saw the fifth round, you know what the investments are. They are shots to the body. Bernard is throwing shots to the body with both hands. Sixth round, I thought this was another big round for Bernard Hopkins, right? Seventh round, again, Bernard, the difference in the fight, why Bernard Hopkins was able to land something like 60 more blows than Jean Pascal, is that Pascal comes in, he's trying to lead. He can only counter with his left hand. He's trying to lead most of the time. He comes in, throws some punches. Hopkins tucks his head behind his shoulder, then starts going low, takes out his rib cage. So the seventh round, I thought that Bernard Hopkins won that seventh round. Let me point out, Glenn Johnson happened to be at ringside. They interviewed Glenn Johnson after the seventh round, and Johnson says that he's expecting Bernard Hopkins to take over the fight. That Hopkins has turned the tide, and he started to dominate the fight. Now, it's interesting because, understand, Glenn Johnson, before the fight, had picked Pascal to win the fight. The eighth round, we'll be talking about for a long time. I had the 8th round, which was very sloppy, a 10-10 round. I just didn't see which one of those guys had any clear advantage in that round. In the 9th round, I had it 10-9, Bernard Hopkins. Again, body shots ruling the day. 10th round, close round. But here again, I had the 10th round, 10-9, Bernard Hopkins. 11th round, I don't think there could be any dispute. I thought Hopkins landed the punch of the fight. I thought Pascal was in trouble for part of the round. I'm not sure if the announcers understood how bad off Pascal was. I had the 11th round, a clear 10-9 round for Bernard Hopkins. Let's talk about the 12th round. The 12th round, I saw both fighters going at it, emptying the gun, giving what they had. I did not think either guy in that 12th round had an advantage. I thought the 12th round was a 10-10 round. In other words, and I know this is controversial, but the kind of things I'm looking for, all I can say is this. I did not give Jean Pascal a round after the 3rd round. On my scorecard, Bernard Hopkins won this fight by 2 points. Okay, let me also say this too. At the end of the fight, when they announced the decision in Quebec City, where Jean Pascal is from, after the crowd had cheered Hopkins when Hopkins went over to the side of the ring while awaiting the decision, the crowd booed when it heard that this fight was a draw. Right? In my opinion, Bernard Hopkins actually earned the win against Jean Pascal. He made up a 5-point deficit. Let me also point out, too, that I have little doubt, especially since this fight was one of increasing dominance as the fight went along. I have little doubt that Bernard Hopkins, who is a counterpuncher, he's not a combination puncher, right? He's a guy who literally is just waiting for Pascal to make a mistake, then he jumps in and he throws punches. He has cracked the code on Jean Pascal. In other words, Pascal, quite frankly, really is somewhat defenseless in terms of his body. He really relies heavily on athleticism, and he's not a gifted counterpuncher. He does have one hell of a left hook, right? He also throws punches with a lot of power. The problem is just what Nassim Richardson said it was at the end of the 5th round. He gets tired. Here, not only was he fatiguing, but his body was gone. The other problem, too, is Pascal really has to totally ambush. He has to get in, then get out, because when he sticks around, he doesn't know how to defend himself in prolonged interludes against folks like Bernard Hopkins. In other words, while Hopkins was the slower fighter, didn't have the punch that Pascal had, didn't have the legs that Pascal had, quite frankly, he had skills that Pascal is still learning. Also, he had Pascal's right hand so timed that Pascal looks amateurish with it after the 3rd round. Take a look at the film. You're going to see that he takes away Pascal's right hand. Pascal's not throwing body shots, right? When Pascal comes in with that left, Hopkins is blocking it, then Hopkins is taking apart his body. It's so bad that Hopkins is the one who actually is cornering Pascal in the ring for much of the fight. So I thought Pascal won. I actually agree with Al Bernstein. I agree with Jim Gray. Excuse me, not Pascal. I thought Hopkins won. I agree with Al Bernstein. I agree with Jim Gray. But at the same time, when you get knocked down legitimately 2 times in a fight, then all I can say is you have a hole to climb out of, especially when you're in front of 16,000 people in the other guy's backyard. To sum up, I thought Hopkins won this fight. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube and visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.